Tashi shared about experiencing an earthquake. Tashi was with a friend when a first tremor hit. They stumbled into the road.
See them come down so quickly and so incredibly destructively. It made me wonder about the places where all of those injured people, now mounting towards 20,000, are being treated.
Tashi came around to the sound of screaming people, a sharp pain in his hand. He went to a nearby hospital, which had spilled out into the street for fear of another quake. Even those in the ICU were out in the road. Victims increased by the minute. Some of whom had been crashed and were too far gone to be helped. Thanks to the element, people in the ICU were dying too. Tashi left without seeing a doctor. There were just too many people who needed much more urgent care. He brought a sling and left. As Tashi returned to his family, he began to understand the enormity of the devotion. Stone and debris littered across the street, and foundations were ripped apart. He was able to find food and water. Many families took shelter in a field nearby. A few minutes later, the suffering wasn't over. Tashi cried and cried. Tashi tried to sleep, but he couldn't. His eyes searched through the people huddled nearby. Days have passed. Tashi was finally able to get an X-ray, and he returned home.
The earthquake. An unstoppable force of tremendous power. Most people know what earthquakes are. Do you know how they're caused? Basically, the Earth is surprisingly not a dead ball of rock like the Moon. It's worse. The innermost layer is the core, which is around as hot as the surface of the Sun. Around that is the mantle. Pretty much a layer of melted rock, or magma. Luckily, there's 2 more layers above that, or we wouldn't be here today. The 2 layers above are the lithosphere and the crust, which is the layer of rock above the lithosphere. Surrounding the mantle is the lithosphere. The lithosphere is a hollow, cracked shell. These cracks form tectonic plates. The core heats up the mantle, causing material to float to the surface. Then the hot material cools down and sinks back to the core, where it repeats the process. As you can imagine, this is an everlasting movement. Since the tectonic plates are floating above, they get dragged along for the ride. The tectonic plate movement is really slow. They're only about a few centimeters a year. That's as fast as your fingernails grow. Although slow, the movement of the tectonic plates are an unstoppable force. Make large faults in the Earth's crust. Usually, this happens near plate boundaries. Normally, the plates slide against each other smoothly, but sometimes the slabs get jammed. However, that does not mean the magma stops moving. Instead, a large amount of energy builds up. Eventually, the plates shift, releasing an enormous amount of energy. This release is called an earthquake. Earthquakes can be destructive, but it can help if we understand them. Imagine you're coming home after a long, hard day at school. Suddenly, there's a rumbling sound and the ground starts shaking. You race home and curl up in a fetal position under your bed and close your eyes. When you finally open them, there's destruction everywhere. A large amount of dirt and mud has slid off the side of a nearby mountain, burying half your neighborhood. You hear water and look up. You see a massive 100-foot wave. It crashes down. You run to a neighbor's house and get in the basement. You hear a booming sound and the house collapses. A piece of debris hits your head hard. You black out. When you finally come to your senses, you're in a field hospital made of tents. 3 days later, after fading in and out of consciousness, you go up and ask somebody what happened. He answers with one word: earthquake. These are real scenarios that have actually happened. That shaking, an earthquake. That dirt, a mudslide. In that wave, a tsunami. These are the effects of an earthquake. Earthquakes can crack open the the ground, uproot trees and houses from their foundations, and more. Worst of all, they can create other natural disasters, such as tsunamis. Huge waves that can reach up to 100 feet tall. Mudslides. Mud and storms sliding down the side of a mountain, destroying anything in its path, wiping out entire towns and villages, burying alive and killing people in various ways. Earthquakes can split the ground, break buildings, and cause many fatalities. Measurement. The point where an earthquake starts is called the focus. The focus is usually around 12 miles deep. Right above the focus is the epicenter, which is on the surface. People that study earthquakes are called seismologists. A tool that they use is a seismograph. A seismograph is a tool that measures the duration, strength, and frequency of seismic waves. Seismographs are in the earth where earthquakes usually happen. The seismograph has two main parts: the seismometer and the seismogram. The seismometer detects the strength of the waves and detects the time passed between the P and S waves. This helps determine where the epicenter is. The seismogram is the actual data from the seismograph. It's like the line on a heart rate monitor. Small peaks mean small movements, while big peaks mean big movements. The most common scale to measure earthquakes is called the Richter scale. Charles Richter invented the scale in 1934. He uses information from the seismometer. On the Richter scale, earthquakes are measured from 1.0 to 10.0. Smaller earthquakes are given a low score, but major earthquakes are given a large score. A major earthquake is usually around 7.0 or higher. The largest earthquake ever was 9.5 earthquake in Chile, 1960.
Richter scales are very important for predicting earthquakes because they tell you the magnitude of an earthquake. Earthquakes at the top of the Richter scale will cause a lot of destruction. One is go somewhere safe. Because there might be a terrible earthquake that was going to happen soon. You need to know the magnitude to see how bad it's going to be. If it was 9.0 magnitude and the Richter scales weren't invented, you wouldn't know if there was an earthquake happening soon. You need to go somewhere safe. This is hard to believe, but it's true. Toads are better at predicting earthquakes than seismologists. Male toads abandoned their breeding site 5 days before the earthquake that struck Italy in 2009. Other animals may have weird reactions. For example, dogs might bark wildly, or rats and snakes come out of their holes. Unlike the toads, the animals might act strange too soon for you to go somewhere safe. Thank you for watching Predictions.
Famous earthquakes. In 1906, San Francisco had one of the most well-known earthquakes ever in the United States. About 30,000 buildings were demolished during the quake. Everything that wasn't destroyed during the quake got destroyed in the fire that raged on for 3 days after it. About 3,000 people died during the quake. This earthquake was an 8.0 on the Richter scale. There was damage in an area of approximately 375,000 square feet, because somewhat to $400 million in damage, which is about $8 billion in today's money. The most powerful earthquake ever known is the Chile earthquake in May 1960. This earthquake was 9.5 on the Richter scale. About 2 million people became homeless, and about 4,485 people died.
Grand tsunamis formed by the quake destroyed everything. 16-foot waves were crashing into the land. A tsunami sent the waves into the other direction, killing 138 people in Japan and 61 people in Hawaii.
The Shenzhen, China earthquake was back in 1556. It was either an 8.0 or an 8.3 on the Richter scale, but they are still not sure. Back then, there were no modern building codes to stop buildings from getting wrecked. Giant landslides made by the quake covered large populations of soil, rocks, and mud. About 830,000 people died during the quake. The high death toll of this earthquake makes it the deadliest earthquake ever.
There are many safety concerns when an earthquake happens. There are times when you do not have to evacuate if it is mild, and times when you need to leave if it is severe. When an earthquake occurs, do not go near the windows because something could hit it or crash it and it can hit you. Also, do not stay near any objects that are hung up on the wall or objects that are an accessory that could fall on you. Also, if you are outside, stay away from buildings and any other objects and drop to the ground because something could fall on you. If you are in your house, then go to the middle of the room only if you can, or stay under a table and make sure nothing is on top of it. Many earthquakes happen in islands because they are surrounded by water, and there can be an earthquake underwater. Most earthquakes occur near the Ring of Fire. Many earthquakes happen where volcanoes are.